Welcome. In this video, we are going to express this function as the sum of the power series and find the radius and interval of convergence. So recall, and if you're, if you've already watched my previous videos, if you're in my class or just happen to go in order, you can probably fast forward a bit because I'm going to go over the same thing I go over at the beginning of every one of these videos. That is, I'm going to go over a key power series. So this is the sum from 0 to infinity of x to the n is equal to 1 plus x squared plus x cubed plus x to the fourth and so on. Well, this equals something very nice so long as the absolute value of this x here is less than 1. And what this equals is 1 over 1 minus x. So the idea is, think of each of these x's as some blob. And I'm going to color these in here. Okay, so there is my blob. And the idea is I want to rewrite all of these as 1 over 1 minus some blob. And then whatever is in my blob gets replaced in here for every single x. So let's do that. Let's rewrite this as a 1 over a 1 minus some blob. And this blob in this case would be negative 2x. This here is my blob. Now, you can jump straight into writing this as a series. But for beginners here, I'm going to do one more example where I write out the first few terms. This is 1 plus negative 2x. And I do this just to help everyone get used to what these look like when they're expanded and used to recognizing patterns. Plus negative 2x squared plus negative 2x cubed. And I wrote this one too big, so let me erase it and make it smaller. There we are, so I can fit more in. Plus negative 2x to the fourth. There we are. So this is 1 minus 2x plus 4x squared minus 8x cubed plus 16x to the fourth, and so on. Now, what is this going to equal? Well, from here we see really easily that this is the sum from n equals 0 to infinity of whatever my blob is, so that's negative 2x to the n power. We can also determine it from a pattern here. So if this is the 0th term, this is the n equals 1, 2, 3, fourth term, and so on, you can easily see that the exponent is always the n, and then the coefficient is always 2 to that n power. And we always have to account for that negative, so let's do that first. Negative 1 to the n, 2 to the nth power, and x to the nth power. And let's see if this series here matches up with this one. Well, if I were to split this one up, I'd get negative 1 to the n, 2 to the n, x to the n. So as you can see, you can go about finding these power series multiple ways. Let me erase this. This is getting a little crowded. My preference is to write this with just the negative separate and then, oops, 2, not n, excuse me, x to the nth power. I think that's a really clear, straightforward manner in which to write this. And the whole idea of writing out these terms is to show you that you can either write everything out and look for a pattern, or you can just plop, like I said, your blob directly into this key power series. Okay, now let's go ahead and find its interval of convergence. And for the interval of convergence, we need to check the blob. We need to check that its absolute value is less than 1, or where that occurs. Okay, so my blob in this case, remember, is my negative 2x. And so I'll rewrite this as we had it originally, up top. Here we are. And we all agree that this is our blob that we put in the absolute value. Well, where is that less than 1? Well, clearly I can rewrite this, and I'm showing more steps than you need to since, again, this is intended for beginners at power series. So I can write this as the absolute value of negative 2 times the absolute value of x. Well, of course, the absolute value of negative 2 is just 2. So I have 2 times the absolute value of x is less than 1. So the absolute value of x is less than 1/2. That gives me a radius of convergence of 1/2 and an interval of convergence from negative 1/2 to 1/2. Excuse me, that was a little messy. Let me rewrite this. There we are. So those of you in my class, this is what I would want to see as your final answer. But of course, I expect to see all of these steps if you're in my class. I also expect to see at least these steps here. All right, keep calm and math on.